ようこそどうぞはじめまして
Hello everyone, and welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. It's been another long, crazy week in a year full of long, crazy weeks. And once again, I cannot necessarily say that watching cartoons has been on the top of my mental priority list. I'm not gonna lie, I may not be super prepared for this episode, but at least this time I feel like we may be moving in a better direction than the last time I've had to say something like that at the beginning of an episode.
I mean, look, if nothing else, anime is a way for us to not think about anything else for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, and I think that has always had a value in these times of ours.
Yes. So, we can forget about US politics for 90 minutes here and chat about anime as we do. So, just to introduce everybody, I'm Jel. I'm joined by Aru.
Still here. Not dead yet.
I am joined by G.
What's good, everyone?
And this week we are joined by Artemis.
Hey, good to be here.
All right, so I'm in a bit of a weird spot this season because I am actually watching 6 shows, which is a lot for me. And yet, I don't really want to talk about most of them. Like, if you take, we were just chatting before, Ira was mentioning Adachi and Shimamura. I actually really like that show a lot, and I think people should watch it, but do I have anything to say?
That makes one of us?
Yeah, well, we may differ opinion on that, but neither one of us really have much else to say about it, because it's kind of, it has
is what it is.
Its thing, and it continues to do it, and I don't really have anything to say that I didn't say last episode. So,
indeed.
So some of those shows, I'll probably just double those up, and we'll talk about them, next time or something. But that said, we do still have quite a few other things to talk about. So we'll kick things off with the show that never dies. Probably the third season that we've been talking about, Great Pretender, as scheduling and Netflix have stretched that out over time for us. I think the season 2, just PSA, I think the season 2 comes out like November 25th or something officially on Netflix.
Sure. Couple weeks, yeah.
But, we've kind of already started watching it. I believe we've mentioned before Artemis has already seen the whole thing.
Yes.
But me and G and Iro have only watched up to episode 17, which is the first 3 episodes. So that's kind of what we'll focus on
of the final arc, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of the final part 4 arc. So I have some possibly good and some bad things to say about this.
I feel like you said possibly good, so meaning less of them. So why don't you lead with that?
I think there's going to be some caveats to the good bits, whereas the bad bits I was definitely not liking. First of all, just like the whole let's do this whole thing again with Makoto trying to quit and getting scammed back into the game on his... I feel like that would have been funny if they, condensed it into, just 30 seconds of, let's just get this over with. We all know what this is.
Yeah.
But they dragged it out into, an actual serious full episode and a half or something of, him once again trying to lead an honest life and getting conned back into, apparently, child trafficking.
Human trafficking, oh boy.
Yeah, which is I think that is the other element of this, right? Is the past times Makoto got dragged into, some sort of criminal scheme. It was drug manufacturing, which, let's be frank, is not good, but...
but he didn't actually do the drug manufacturing.
And sorry, Artemis, what did you say?
He didn't actually do the drug manufacturing though.
Right.
He just said he did the drug manufacturing. So
yeah, and then what was the other one? It was
art theft,
art fraud, and sports betting fraud, which are in the grand scheme of things entirely harmless crimes. And then suddenly it's Now we're getting into maybe the most evil crime, like literally the actual most evil crime in human existence, human trafficking, and
Right, which you cannot fake.
yeah, like I mean that's the thing, right? Like. I don't think the show is going to suddenly be like, Lord's going to like take his mask off and be like, surprise, all the kids were actors. Like,
right. Yeah, I was also, that also raised an eyebrow for me because I feel like this is not really the time or place to address these issues, but
I mean,
or even to just
will...
casually bring it up as a plot premise or something.
Yeah.
And it's like they really go into it. Like they're not like just like he goes to the auction. Like, you know, it's...
I will say I appreciate. I think G was about to get it actually.
Yes,
I do appreciate that. In that, because normally when the Yakuza are involved in media, they are lionized to a certain degree.
Right.
Of like, just look at like Ikebukuro Westgate Park or whatever, where the gangs are good and they don't do the drugs and we help the cops out, folks.
Right, like
and then
sorry,
Great Pretender is like, here are the Yakuza and they're human trafficking because they're fucking criminals.
Right, like I think there's very much a tendency in Japanese media to portray the Yakuza, like, even at their worst, as like violent vigilantes who are like, you know, have their own like unique code of honor that they adhere to that, like, you know, puts them on the other side, but like, you know, at the end of the day they're still Japanese like you and me. Whereas Great Pretender is actually maybe one of the only works I can think of that has portrayed the Yakuza as an unequivocally criminal organization, and I guess I do want to give it credit for that, if nothing else. Like, I feel like that's damning with faint praise here, but like
there's nothing to sympathize with.
Right.
In quite the opposite, actually. They're actively, I think, trying to make you not like these characters.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, like the first arc literally had like a literal drug dealer that was more sympathetic than
right.
The Yakuza here, but yeah, I guess, I don't know, I hate that we're already getting into maybe our negatives, so Jel, before we like really go off course here, I think you did say there were some things you liked about this.
Well, I wanted to get the bad stuff out of the way, and then I think the things that could be good are a little more interesting. I'll say, because my opinion has been waning on this show with each arc. I feel like each arc has been worse than the last up until now.
I think that's fair.
In my opinion. But, and I will say I am more interested in what's going on now than I was in the last two arcs. Part of it is because it is kind of focused back on Makoto and his, whatever is going on in his brain. And I guess, and I don't know if we're all going to have the exact same interpretation of this, but are they implying that, like, Makoto is going down some kind of, like, path to being an actual real criminal?
Deep. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're kind of going that direction, I think.
My greatest worry about this arc is probably, and this is why I did want to talk about the show before we had finished it, because, Jel, I know you had suggested maybe we just wait till we finish this arc before we talk about it, but I do kind of want to get my thoughts out here in the moment so that, you know, a month from now we can all laugh at how wrong or right
yes, we
was.
Can. Right.
But
I'm sure Artemis is biting her tongue over here.
Get it on tape, yeah.
So the thing that really concerns me about this arc is how they're going to handle the reveal that Makoto's father is working for the Triads, right? Like, we've, you know, as Iro can attest, in episode 17, when they let off with yet another flashback to Makoto's dad, I literally said out loud, oh no, is this arc, because this arc is about the Yakuza, are we going to find out that Makoto's father is still alive and working for the Yakuza, and that this arc will be about him reconciling his relationship with his father, and like somehow this will also retroactively like redeem his father or something? And I really hope that doesn't happen. And then about 10 minutes later, Makoto's dad literally shows up.
Yes.
And again, I don't know how this is going to be approached or addressed. I'm literally only basing this off of what I've seen so far and what I've seen of the show overall. But I don't want Makoto's dad to be used as like this narrative bludgeon for Makoto's character development. Like,
oh, I think we're already down that path.
Right,
so.
and that's why I'm like, I'm not digging it. Like, I think that if you go back to like what I was saying about episode 2 of this show, I thought that the flashback with Makoto was actually one of the strongest like elements of the show's narrative. Like, in the span of like less than 5 minutes, they were able to like immediately communicate to us how the reveal about Makoto's father's like, you know, criminal dealings like utterly shattered the like core like moral base of Makoto's character, and like would continue to define him for the rest of his life. Like, that tragedy would define him, and I really liked that. Like, I'm not one of those guys who says, oh, character development isn't good unless characters are miserable, but I do think that element was really strong. Like, it really worked for me, and so dredging him back up again, bringing him, you know, having Makoto confront his past, it's like, I guess I don't know how I feel about it. Like, you know, at least
it is a very common and easy narrative shortcut, right? Like,
yeah.
Bring back dad, bring back a family member.
Right.
And I'm also very tired of that.
And like, you know, as episode 17 ends with Makoto's father betraying Makoto, you know, being like, this is who I really am, I'm a criminal, like, and yet I don't buy it because this show still has 8 episodes left. Like, are we going to get the Makoto's dad redemption arc? Like, do I want that? I'm not sure I do. Like,
yeah. And they're kind of setting that up because the whole thing with his mom never giving up hope on him.
Right, so like...
And the whole thing about forgiveness being important. And the fact that Makoto himself has been in need of forgiveness, let's say. You know, he's also committed crimes, perhaps not the same level.
Right.
But they kind of put that on him, like, well, you know, where were you at when we picked you up, right? Like, you were in jail or whatever, you know. So I feel like that is the direction they are headed.
And I'm just not sure if I give a shit about that. Like, I don't know if that plays with me at all. Like,
right.
I'm not saying X show has to be like Y show, but
I think I would be okay if they don't actually go down the dad redemption tour and leave him as a terrible person, but Makoto uses his own, you know, makes his own decisions in life to be a good person.
I think that would be better, of course.
That would be better. I think that's probably the most, like, realistically possible
best case scenario at this point.
Yeah, and I think that it is unfortunate that we're sitting here being like, well, that's probably the best we're going to get out of this show, when, like, I know that a lot of us at the end of the 3rd arc, we're all hoping, oh, like, what if the final arc is where Lawrence is finally the villain, or, like, finally Makoto gets to one-up Lauren, and so far that doesn't seem to be the case. Like,
I mean, there's a lot of episodes left, too, so
I guess that
may be
true.
A factor, like, but...
I am curious how they're going to stretch this arc out, because it's like, I think we all agreed, like, even the, like, 5-episode Singapore arc was already kind of stretching things, and I just don't know how they're going to maintain this arc that is, like, double the length of all of the other ones.
Oh, I'm trying so hard not to say anything right now, you guys!
I'm looking forward to watching the next few episodes.
Sorry.
You picked a good episode to... Well, maybe you picked a good episode to stop at, and that's kind of where that part of the story for this arc ends, but a new one's about to begin. And it is still part of that same overall story arc, but it introduces some new elements that I think tie in a lot better with the show.
Okay.
All right, that's good to hear.
That's good to hear, because, I mean...
Yeah.
You go ahead.
I don't know if you guys will like it as much still, like, as we all did, I think, the very first story arc of the show, but I think it does get better.
Okay, that's really promising to hear. I know that there is probably more to this story, right? I mean, the beginning of this arc literally opens up with, like, Laurent and his mysterious waifu that, you know, we haven't seen since, right? Like, there is definitely...
There's more things, more loose ends to tie up than what we've covered so far.
Right,
for sure.
so... Yes, there's definitely more to this story than what we've seen. I think it's just that the opening salvos of this arc, I think...
They were definitely not my my favorites either. And I think I said that, I mean, that was about probably 2 months ago where I said on that podcast that even though I didn't think the arc matched, like could quite match the gloriousness of arc number 1, that I was like relatively satisfied with the ending, and I think I still am.
Right, I do remember that. So I hope that this show will like prove that out in the end for us, because I think we're saying all this, but also like I don't think any of us is implying that Great Pretender is a bad show. I think we've all like broadly
still say it's one of the best shows this year.
Right, I think we've all broadly enjoyed it to certain degrees. Like it is a very well made show. The characters are very likable. They still are. Like I think that's the thing. All the good things about the show that we said like at the beginning are mostly still there. I think some of this is probably just down to the show set such a high bar at the beginning
it has yet to live up to the bar it set in the beginning. So
we can't help but nitpick it to death in some regards. It's just it's a bad habit of ours, but
for what it's worth, I think 18 is where it kind of starts picking up again.
Okay.
And then the last couple of episodes in particular, I can't remember exactly when certain events happen because it's been a while for me, but I do think the last couple of episodes in particular bring back that I'm going to say idiocy, lovable idiocy
of
the first arc,
right.
Like in terms of just the crap that they pull and somehow manage to pull off, which is not in any way realistic, but just extremely fun to watch.
Good. That's what I want to hear. Like I think maybe that's the thing, right? I think just the first 3 episodes of this arc specifically lost a lot of that like manic, almost Lupin energy that like a lot of the earlier stuff had. And
I think that energy at least does come back in part. So
cool.
Yeah.
I think at the very least, I have restored my motivation to watch, because as you guys know, I kind of had to drag myself to download this and start watching.
Right, you literally have not like watched this show in like months or something.
And because like the previous arc when they were doing their romantic comedy thing or whatever, I was just like, all right, let's just get this over with. And now I actually am motivated to keep watching, whether good or bad, to see what happens. So.
I do think the show is it goes down better when you watch one arc at a time, like one whole arc at a time.
That would make sense.
Maybe the Netflix formatting was actually right for this show, and
yeah. Well, I'm not. I will refuse to concede to Netflix on that one.
That's fine.
Honestly, I think the show does a really good job of knowing where to cut an episode. So yeah. Week to week, baby.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will touch base with that again for the
one day. Yep.
For the next. Let's stretch this out for the rest of the year, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. Let's move along and let's talk about Taiso Samurai or Gymnastic Samurai, whatever you want to call it.
All right, I'm just gonna crack my knuckles here and read this.
Yeah, I did not have kind words to say about the show last episode, but Artemis is still watching it.
Where did you guys get up to? Just two?
I got to maybe episode 3.
I believe Gina and I stopped after episode 1.
We stopped at the first
so
episode.
episode 5 just aired yesterday, I think, or the day before. So
okay.
I got the last episode I saw was when he does the challenge with the new kid when they have their gymnastics duel.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That was the last thing I saw.
Yeah. All right. Well, you still won't like it. I feel like 90% confident saying that if you continue to watch up to where I've seen, you would still have pretty much only negative things to say about it.
Ouch.
Nothing has changed, basically.
No, I think my main problem, especially after episode 5, is that they're leaning heavily into the tell don't show aspect, where he goes, like the main character goes to the NHK Cup, right, and he's competing like in a national competition, and they've built up, he's done like training montages up until this point, and like, his coach has been like, yes, we really must focus now on getting your moves down to perfection. Like, we can't have any roughness. Like, we're just going to focus on getting the moves you can do well so that there are no flaws, kind of thing. Fine, whatever. And then he goes to the NHK Cup and presumably performs at the NHK Cup.
They don't even fucking show it.
They don't show a single frame of him
no.
actually performing.
Like, at
not
least,
one.
Yuri on Ice used a lot of stock footage, but at least they fucking showed it every
They
time.
did not show a single frame. They showed him at the start coming into the NHK Cup, and they showed him at the
man.
end next to the podium after the NHK Cup, and they show nothing in between of him at performing anything.
Wow, so much gymnastics.
They do show gymnastics, but they show different events, and they show different gymnasts who we've never met.
They still show stuff, but not the main guys.
Other than
Christ.
the young guy with the headband, doing we don't know any of the other gymnasts, and they're all doing their key events.
Huh.
And there's some commentary on them, and then that's kind of it.
Christ.
So, I guess the big question is, why are you still watching?
It is a big question, and I don't know how to answer it. I guess, well, first of all, there's so little else I'm watching this season. I'm watching Akudama and I'm watching Osomatsu, and that's it. Other than that, that's all. So part of it's a kind of may as well, I guess, kind of attitude.
As much as I dunked on it last time, it's not the worst thing going. I mean, it's...
I guess it has a couple of moments that I like every now and again. I still like the mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Is
she was
pretty
great.
cool, and I like the weird girl who works at the bar, with them, the blonde chick with the super tan skin.
She's
dressed like a gyaru kind of style.
Yeah, I think she only showed up once.
She shows up every now and again.
Yeah.
And there's there's sort of an arc about the daughter being bullied at school because her dad's a celebrity and has been on TV and is kind of an idiot, which is not the most interesting storyline, but it's a decent deviation. It makes for a good counter storyline, I guess.
Yeah, see, I feel like this show would have been better if it was a dad anime. And,
yeah,
because I was saying, if they had gone through with him actually retiring and him accepting the next phase of his life,
right, or having to deal with psychologically the change of being
right
a gymnast day in and day out to being just a dad, identity.
That would be so much more interesting than let's go for one last ride.
So that's the thing I'm asking then. So my impression, based on the one and only episode I watched, was that because he decides not to retire, that okay, so this anime will be about gymnastics. But then Artemis, you're telling me they're not even showing the gymnastics. So at 5 episodes in, do you have a good idea? Do you have a good feeling for what is the actual focus of the story?
I think what I think is that gymnastics is the focus of the story, and I just didn't have the budget to pull it off because every episode is just kind of littered with still frames and just kind of some stock stuff. I just think, unfortunately, that they did not have the money.
They did not bring the Yuri on Ice people for this one.
They did not.
What else is Mappa doing this season?
Jujutsu Kaisen.
Oh, that's where all the money's going.
They're also probably working on Attack on Titan in the back.
Oh, yeah, they are. Mappa's a little busy right now.
The only studio who took the contract for Attack on Titan Season 3, because they're the only people willing to work their animators that hard.
Thanks, Mappa.
Yeah, thanks, Mappa. Yeah. No, those are obviously going to be higher priorities.
Yeah, I guess I'm still watching in part because I am curious to see where it's going to go. Because they've built up this narrative about the gymnast, about Jotaro being old, basically, right? And on the verge of retirement and kind of injured. And he has to beat these, not just the young gymnast with the headband, but a bunch of young up-and-coming gymnasts who just have more to give than him. and I kind of want to know if he's going to succeed or not, because part of me expected him to go to the NHK Cup and miraculously do extremely well and beat everyone, but he didn't place anywhere. Like, he came like 6th, I think, or something like that, or maybe 7th, which was pretty good for him, but not like, whoa, I can't believe all this training and whatever paid, like, those montages really paid off, you know. They did pay off, in that he did okay for himself, but he didn't win. So I'm curious to see how they're going to make this a comeback story, if it's going to be that.
Right. Like, how is he getting, like, at this rate, how is he going to get on the Olympics team?
Right. Given that they do seem pretty focused on this being, well, if this is going to be my last year of gymnastics, then I'm going to do it right and I'm going to do it well, kind of thing, you know?
Is there any chance, like, the mid-season twist is that he does get injured again and then he's just done and he does have to retire, and the rest of the series is about him?
I mean, I doubt it, to be honest.
Okay.
But
let's be real.
But
when was the last time an anime swerved like that?
Yeah, I figured. I'm just trying to throw out theories on how they could salvage this. But
next episode, I think he's going to go on some kind of training camp. Like, there's some kind of joint training camp with China, and they're going to get athletes ready to go to the Olympics or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not a good show. It's not a terrible show. It's just a show that I'm watching because at this point I just want to know like how they're going to pull anything, like how like where the focus is going to land and how it's going to stay there given everything else that is happening plot-wise.
Right. Okay, well, you'll have to keep us posted if anything actually comes out of that.
Yeah.
I won't hold my breath.
And there's only, how many episodes of this are there? 12, 13?
Yes, they're already almost halfway there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned you're also still watching Osomatsu, which another show we dunked on pretty hard last.
Yeah, I think I honestly thought you'd go, because I listened to last week's podcast and I thought you guys were a bit harsh.
Oh yeah, I think just to defend ourselves here, Artemis. I think there were genuinely some great jokes in that first episode. Again, the multicultural, Osomatsu sextuplets or whatever. Like there was definitely some good jokes there. I think the thing that really killed it for me was like, oh, we're just gonna have like this like 5-minute long segment about them being turned into pieces of poop.
Oh yeah, and that was not its best. I was just moment.
Like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. Like, I can't. Like, it was funny the first time. What's his name? What was it? Which one is it? The purple one.
Ichimatsu.
Yeah.
Took a shit on the counter or somewhere. But like. Like, don't get me wrong. As someone who was best friends with somebody whose primary like sense of humor was shitting on people's doorsteps, like I get it, but
for anyone out there listening, anime is very sophisticated, and you should really give it a try.
Yeah.
It's just that I was like, I can't do another like season of this. Like it's.
Has there been any? How many? What are they? Probably on like episode 3 or 4 now by now.
4 episodes in.
Yeah,
but I'm sorry, Artemis. You feel free
to say any other notable good gags.
I think Osomatsu's problem, and this is not just a season 3 problem. I think just the show's problem is that it's a gag show, and like every gag show, not every gag is good.
Yeah.
And some gags are really good, and you just have to kind of sit there and wait for the good ones to show up. And sigh and roll your eyes a bit at when it's not good, but at least know that it'll only be 5 minutes more,
True. I mean, it is definitely a bit-based show. I mean,
right.
And
I guess it's
even though someone said last time, and I agree that season 1 was easily the best, I still think the show as a whole has always been a little hit and miss with its jokes.
No, I think I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Right.
And I guess ultimately it's more hit than miss for me.
Okay.
Or at least above average. And again, given the number of shows I'm watching this season, above average is okay for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, hey, above average is a passing grade, so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have part of me feels like someday I'm just going to be in the mood to watch that at some point and just plow through it.
I mean, like, more importantly, like, Artemis, just let us know when they finally do the, like, thing they do every season where there's, like, the one episode that is, like, extremely good and
that's
clearly
normally like around the
directed.
halfway point somewhere, right? Or something?
Yeah, like, clearly
the-
directed by, like, their top-tier talent.
like
Yeah.
the go-kart race or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
It hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it will, and I will let
like,
you know.
they always have at least one
what
of those
that episode
episodes.
is, and you can watch.
Yeah.
That's the other good thing about Osomatsu. You can pretty much jump in anywhere, right?
Right, exactly.
Like if I said, "Oh, episode 9 is really good this season," you could just watch episode 9 and nothing else, and that would be fine.
That's
Right.
literally what I did with season 2 of Osomatsu-san. I
Yeah.
was like, Gel, where's the Jushima? No, where's the what the fuck is his name?
Yeah, Jushimatsu.
Where's the Iami episode?
Iami
I'm just gonna
episode?
go watch that one.
Right. They just programming note. They did confirm that is going to core again, so
Oh man.
Oh, it
alright.
is? Okay.
that will give us
fun.
6 full seasons of Osomatsu
Oh
by the
boy.
end. Of
Hey, a
this.
full sextuple of
Yeah, one for
Osomatsu.
each. One for
All
each
right.
brother.
Well, at this point, at least, I have no plans to drop.
Okay.
So I will just let you know what episode, and you can download that.
Yeah. All right. Let's move along. And I don't think we talked about this last time, but
Not last week, no.
We'll catch up. This is another one. Maybe we'll alternate episodes or something. But
That's fair.
Yeah.
And we did mention Jujutsu Kaisen.
Sure, yeah.
A little bit. I've been hearing pretty good things about it, but I always take any good things I hear about big name shonen shows with a grain of salt.
I think that's fair.
Yep.
I think Jujutsu Kaisen is, for me, it feels like a shonen that is still trying to find its footing. Like, it has yet to
Yeah.
have, like, the arc that becomes the thing that defines it, right? Like, I think you look at a lot of shonen in the history of shonen, and they have, like, that one arc where it's like, oh, here's where the author finally figured out, like, this is what makes the show tick. These are the kind of villains and confrontations the fans like, and this is what I should lean into.
Right.
You know, like you look at like something like Naruto, right? And it's a combination of like, you know, the Zabuza arc and like the Ginin exams or the Chunin exams. It's kind of like, or you know, you want to boil it down into even like further into like specific moments. It's the Gaara versus Rock Lee fight. It's bits like that where like, oh, this is something special. Like, and I say special, you know, couched in the context of shonen. So, you know, like,
Right.
what I mean is cool fights
Well,
and hot blood and emotion. But
Right.
the thing with Jujutsu Kaisen is that, I mean, the nicest thing, you know, I think we could say for it right now is that it's extremely competent and it's not offensive. Like, the characters don't annoy me. There's nothing about its content that I find particularly distasteful. It's well made. I think it's just that it doesn't really have a voice yet.
Yeah. It's so far.
It's not doing anything unique enough or something unique enough to itself,
yeah.
like having its own, I guess,
Like
personality
what? How
or
many
something
episodes
to
in
it.
are we at this point?
It was like five
Or six, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, and we're gearing up for the tournament arc. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I like tournament arcs, but also I've seen this 100 times.
Right, like,
And you're like, you're doing fine, but there's nothing super special about this so far.
yeah, and like Sunko Park is, you know, trying to do his best here, but you can also tell this is Sunko Park without the God of High School money. Like, he is not
Like, without
He is-
the Crunchyroll money.
right, without the Crunchyroll money, without the webtoon money. So like, he's doing good work, but he is not doing his best work here. Like,
Right.
there are solid set pieces, there's solid action moments, and because he is a very competent action director in general. But look, when you don't have the resources of, like, you know, whatever you had for the God of High School or the Garo movies, like, you know,
Right.
any director is going to struggle, you know? I mean,
And that's always the big problem with shonen shows because they're long and you have to pace your
right.
resources
Yeah.
out over time.
Like-
I'm sure this is going to be at least 2 core, right? Like
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
I
and
believe
like,
it's been confirmed for 2 cores, yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
you know, Mappa's good, but they're not like A-Team Bones good, right? Like, they're not like,
Right.
you know, we're not getting like the My Hero Academia level adaptation here. We are getting the like Promised Neverland level adaptation of like very well done, like very competently made, like very decently executed, but not like outstanding. And I think we're still watching it because, like, you know, as Artemis said many times, it's like, well, the fuck else is there to watch? But also, like, because I have heard good things about this, and I have heard people say that, like, yes, this show, like, the story does take a little bit to find its voice, but it does eventually do. And the OPs, again, I keep talking about the OP and the ED of this show, which are both very good, but, like, they do promise at the things that I would like to see from this show.
Look, a lot of OPs promise things, okay? That doesn't mean we get them.
This is true.
No, but, like, with Shonen, it's a little
Taiso Samurai.
Oh, man.
I know, but it's like, the reason I say that is because, especially with shonen OPs in general, because shonen OPs are often made like after a work has been, you know, been published for a while. They tend to be allowed to indulge in the sorts of things that
It's like, when is that guy going to show up?
right. They get to do the thing of like, oh, because we have the knowledge of what's to come, we can have fun with our opening sequence. We can hint at like the exciting things to come, and I'm like, all right, like I'd love for those things to show up soon, but yeah, it's
I don't know. I was pretty thoroughly put off by episode 1, so I never watched past that.
I think that's entirely fair. Like, it's a pretty weak first episode, even by shonen standards. Like, it ain't no My Hero Academia, that's for sure.
I mean, you guys made it through Demon Slayer, so...
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like,
Yeah, we sure did.
if we watch the entirety of Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen deserves at least that much bare minimum. I feel like I would be a fucking hypocrite for how...
That's kind of how I feel about it.
Look, speak for yourself. The last long-running shonen anime I made my way through was probably Dragon Ball Z or something. Like,
oh man, I thought you were about to say like Full Metal Alchemist or something. But look, I'm just saying, for as hard as we fucking dunked on Demon Slayer week to week, if I did not even finish Jujutsu Kaisen, I feel like that would put my Shonen Jump cred in serious contention. So I have to keep watching this until it hopefully gets really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like it could be worse.
Could be worse. It's true.
So, well, let's move along then and talk about Talentless Nana. If you're looking for something to watch, I might. This show's actually pretty good, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. I kind of talked about last week why I'm hesitant to call it good, but I think what. All right, let's just cut straight to it. I want to talk about what happened in episode 6, which I think just came out.
Tell me what happened
recently.
in episode 6, Joe.
Seeing as none of us here watched it, you'll have to tell us. Yes,
I'm just going to spoil it because this may or may not make you more make people more interested in the show.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to spoil it. So episode 6 starts with they're having a funeral for the kid that Nana offed in episode 5.
Okay.
So she's killed 3 people and tried to kill 4, but the fourth person was the guy who's investigating her, and she finds out that he's immortal. So that's going to be a problem for later.
Like Wolverine regeneration or what? Like
yeah, kind of more of a healing factor type of thing than I just straight up can't die. So like she sets it up so there's a gas explosion in his house or something, and he does get like all burnt up and everything, but then he like heals.
Okay.
So yeah, there may be, and there's a real good bit because like I talked about, he's the guy that's playing like the cat and mouse, and he's like onto her, and there's a good bit where after that he's like, because all the kids have a weakness, like they're all super powerful, but they all have like some kind of weakness.
Sure.
And
classic superhero stuff.
And he's like basically like, oh, you know, I have a weakness, but you know, you can read minds, right? So you already know what it is, and we still don't know what his weakness is. But that he's kind of toying with her because he doesn't think she can actually read minds, which she can't. So that's again part of the cat and mouse.
Right.
But yeah. So episode 6, they're having this funeral, and out of nowhere, this like creepy looking kid walks in, and he's like, "I'm a necromancer," and makes the body come back to life.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And he's like, I can read his memories and everything. And so Nana's like, oh, that's bad because I killed him. And she somehow manages to talk her way out of that. So they introduce 2 new characters. This is creepy necromancer kid and this other girl who's apparently his girlfriend, who's like this tall, energetic girl that apparently has super strength. She's like the punchy,
Sure, yeah.
Tell me more.
super strength girl, and they're like a couple or something. And so Nana's like, well, I better kill this necromancer kid because that's going to get me in trouble. So she just straight up murders him in his sleep. And
Wow, okay.
she goes. She has like poison needles as her favorite murder
sure.
weapon. So she just like needles him in his sleep, and then she goes to get the girl too. And when she goes to get the girl, somebody basically grabs her before she can stab her, and it is revealed that she was basically set up.
This was all a trap.
Everybody assumed the creepy kid was the necromancer because he looks like a creepy kid, and the girl was the super strength girl because she looks tall and strong.
She's the necromancer.
But yes, she's the necromancer.
That's pretty good.
and the kid is the one with the super strength, and he's actually been dead for years, and she's supposed to bring him around as her like zombie puppet.
That's pretty
All
good.
right.
All right, you got me. That's pretty fucking good.
And she started to suspect something was up and set up. So
Used
now
it
there's
as
actually
as a trap.
So now there's actually two people onto her, and the episode kind of ends on the cliffhanger with the zombie kid pinning her to the ground, and it's not looking great for Nana. So she's got to like. And again, Nana has no powers. She can't even really fight or anything. She's just like has to outsmart everybody. So like, how is she gonna get out of this one?
That's pretty good. I won't lie. That's interesting. I mean, look, I'm not saying this is like some revelatory thing, but like that, for that's some solid anime trash right there.
Yes, it's some good like anime trash mind games type of.
I'm down for that.
So. That was probably the best one so far. Some of them have been better than others.
I mean, I can appreciate that, just what you're describing because, again, it's like what you just, how you described the show early on, right? It's like, well, once the twist was out there, it's just like, well, is she just going to kill the rest of these kids, like, unopposed?
Right.
But, now that you're saying, no, actually, like, the kids, her victims are not, like, passive players here, but they are actively, working to prevent their own deaths. That does make it sound a lot more interesting,
right? And even the kid she murdered before that, like he knew that she was the murderer, but he was such an asshole that he was just gonna try to blackmail her.
Instead of classic
yeah. And then that did not end well. So yeah, I think I talked about this last time. Part of the interesting aspect of the show is like Nana's plans don't go well like 40% of the time, and she has to like then think her way out of it. It's not just like I'm mastermind criminal and I'm just like easily offing all these kids. It's like she has to actually take calculated risks.
Sure.
And things may not work. I mean, plot wise things are going to work out, but in universe you're like, well, how's she going to dig her way out of this one? So it's some quality anime trash is all I'm saying.
Man, maybe I should pick this one up. I was thinking, that sounds like a really good dark comedy, and then I just looked it up and realized it's not a comedy.
No, it's not. There's some silly bits to like in between some of the things, but it's not a comedy.
Right, because I mean, at this point, does the show maintain any of the facade from episode 1, or has that like most?
No, that's completely out the window.
Right. Okay,
yeah.
so it's not.
So the majority of the show, I was thinking Nana's almost reminds me of like Lelouch or something. Where the majority of the show,
anime genius masterminds,
the majority of the show is like inside her head as she's trying to like
outthink
everybody. But yeah, no, the pretense of the beginning. Of
it's a fucking it's cliche at this point, but like you even just describing like the whole like the kid wasn't the necromancer like literally does remind me of like the opening salvos of like freaking Death Note, right? Where like.
Yeah, there's some of that in there too, for sure.
L has the fake L go up on TV, and so when Light kills the fake L is immediately able to deduce that, like, whoever is Kira like possesses some ability to do that stuff, like,
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. There is
And
a little bit of Death
within
Note going
the,
on.
like, limited area that the TV broadcast was. Or
right,
whatever.
right, like that kind of stuff, right? Like it's very much like,
Yeah, there's that kind of thing going on. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't even think of Death Note, but yes, there's some Death Note.
I just
in there.
mean like very much like I'm not the biggest Death Note fan, but like I do have a soft spot for like anime's idea of what smart people intrigue is, which is like
Yes.
usually not actually that smart. In fact, it's usually pretty stupid. It's usually a stupid person's idea of what smart people talk and act like, but there's something sometimes entertaining about that.
With cutscenes,
Yeah.
all according to plan.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know if I know exactly how to explain it, but I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Where I think they I think they tend to cover up the lack of them actually being geniuses by just making some ridiculous circumstance that's like so far out there that it's entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, I'm having fun. And like I said, it's not like the best production. The writing's not necessarily fantastic. I don't really care for the art or either, but it's just quality trash.
I mean, sometimes all a show needs to do is be a lot of fun, like the
Yes,
next show.
I'm having
or
fun.
next-
Like,
Right,
like our next show.
Yes. Like our next show, let's revisit Akudama Drive.
Yo, Akudama Drive is still so fucking good. God damn.
I'm enjoying it a lot.
This show is a lot of fun. Artemis, you haven't been on, so I'd like to hear maybe your opinion first, because I know this is one of the ones you're still watching,
Oh, it's
right?
great. I have no complaints. I have zero complaints.
That's good.
It's still dumb. It's still fun. It's still dumb. Like, what can I say? It's good times.
So I think we had 2 episodes. The one was like the actual finish of the train heist.
Yeah.
The fact that there's a train heist. Train heist
it
is
was
always good.
and
I mean,
I
yes,
really
I
do
love
like.
train heists.
Yeah, so the 2 episodes since our last podcast were the finish of the train like heist fight with the executioners, and then the next episode where they're kind of preparing for their next big job. And
Right. The train fight was really good.
I really, really love these 2 episodes actually as part of a set, because the train fight itself like is a really magnificent premise for a conflict. Like, and they do it, and it really does a good job of immediately like spelling out like what each member of the party brings to the table, because like just the basic premise of, oh, we got to split into 2 teams. Half of us are trying to hack these doors, while the other half are trying to hold back these like hyper competent super killer cops trying to kill us.
And they all could die, including
Right.
the cops.
Right.
if they
and,
don't,
like,
if this doesn't.
Right. You got the
happen.
time limit, and like the 2 teams even like kind of mix and match a little bit like across the fight, because like every now and then like somebody gets left behind, and so they're stuck dealing.
Gets caught up and like.
Yeah.
Or
It's,
switch out. Like,
it's really fun.
I
really-
lost it when Brawler catches the bullet.
Oh, when he catches the bullet with his teeth and then like spits it out fast enough to. Oh, so good. And, the classic let yourself get stabbed so you can just
the guy.
suplex the motherfucker. Oh, so
Right.
good. So
Take advantage
so
of having
all the action scenes so far have been really solid, and I don't normally like action because I just don't care for it enough to watch a show based on it.
Right.
But even if that's all the show had to bring, and it's not, but even if it was, I would still be watching it.
Yeah, and I think to echo what you're saying, Artemis, I think it's also that the action does a really good job of reflecting the characters' personalities. Like, you
Right.
know,
It's not like they're just punching each other. Like they're.
I mean, Brawler
they're fighting
is,
in a
but
way
everyone
that
else-
reflects
yeah.
who they are.
Right, like, Courier's whole goal during that fight is just to get back to his bike because he knows he's kind of useless without it.
Right.
Or it's stuff like that I think does a really good job. And then I think the next episode, to continue this like line of thinking, is I think the next episode proves that this show doesn't even need to have fighting all the time to still be entertaining. Like,
yeah.
I think the next episode, or the most recent one, is the proof of concept that these characters are likable enough on their own that we don't need to see them fighting to still like them.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's writing this, it's the Danganronpa guy, right?
Yeah, I
But-
think.
I mean,
He's doing a good job. Like, I thought because I agree, because episode 3 is kind of more the setup downtime episode, and like the magic bento box was like,
so
Fun
good.
gag,
such a great device for this type of episode.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
those kinds of things of like, I just feel like everybody really knows what they're doing with this show.
Yeah,
It was a good breather episode as well. Like, I think we needed one episode where we kind of stopped and took a pause for a second and got to know the characters outside of their respective
Right.
jobs.
Yeah.
And it kind of reevaluating, because right now the whole thing has been like, well, I'll give you $1 billion. Also, if you don't join, your head's going to explode. But now that that's kind of not the motivation, how are you keeping these characters together?
Yeah. It's
I mean, we already had Hacker leave, but I'm sure he'll be back.
He'll
And
be
I
back.
was impressed by that, actually, because I assumed that it was going to do the stereotypical anime thing where he would leave and then immediately come back for some
Right.
for some kind of contrived
I mean,
reason.
I think he'll come back. It's just when, right?
Yeah, but like if it's not immediately, that's fine. But I thought either he wouldn't leave after, or like he would say he would leave, and then I'd have this kind of tearful, like, no, don't do it. But I know, kind of thing. And then he'd be like, oh, well, now that this has happened, I guess I can't leave after all.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead, he's just like, I'm out
Yeah,
here.
Yeah,
I'm assuming in their darkest hour he's going to appear out
I'm
of
sure.
nowhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And but yes, that even if that were the case, it's different than I was also fully expecting, at least by the end of the episode, that he would join the team back, and he hasn't yet.
Also,
Yeah.
you just
Right.
know in like 5 episodes down the line is like it's just gonna be Swindler and Courier, and she'll be like, "I'm hiring you for one last job to save all of our wacky friends," and gives them the 500 yen coin or whatever.
Yeah, that's totally gonna
Yeah.
happen. I'm so looking forward to it. My variation on that is, what if the way it goes is like Courier's about to like do some like really daring like one man mission, right? And she's like, "I'm hiring you for one last job," and he's like, "What is
Don't
it?"
die.
Right, to live and come back to us for 500 yen. And he's like, he gives like a smirk, and he's like, "I accept it," or something,
Always
like,
get the job done.
right? Oh, like it's gonna be something like that, right? Like it's gonna be the
dumb,
thing.
like-
500 yen and some takoyaki.
Yeah, like it's gonna be the thing where that at least Iro and I really love of like 30 seconds before the thing happens.
You can tell.
You know it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really do like the character, like elements in general. Like I'm really surprised by it. Like I really got a kick out of the most recent episodes, like the little back and forth with Doctor and Swindler, where like Doctor ends up being so smart she loops back to being the dumbest person in the party because she assumes that
I know you're
the
pretending
nice
to be
girl
nice.
personality
Yeah.
is the front, which
Right.
is very funny.
Well, I mean, there's definitely something up with Swindler. So
Definitely,
I was
but-
wondering if it had something to do with her eyes. Her eyes seem to be drawn a little bit differently from everyone else's, kind of similar to the kids.
Yeah,
maybe?
that's what I was
Like
thinking.
that kind of
was-
weird,
I
like
was
they have
that
the same
really
eyes.
Well,
thick
I don't-
ring around the eyes, maybe, or something.
Well, the thing I did notice is that the female executioner has the same eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
there was one bit of dialogue where one of the kids, I felt like it implied that Swindler was like their teacher or something. I don't know if you guys saw that or if I'm just
Which
stretching
part was
here,
that?
but there
Was that like around the
I-
bento box time, or like what? When was that?
Yeah, when around the lunchbox time where they're like, was did they say their teacher or somebody said?
Professor, like they say something like, "Oh, the
Yeah,
Oh.
said we
Gave
should
to
eat.
us."
And
Yeah.
they said
Yeah.
she said your professor sounds really kind or something.
Right,
Or- yeah.
and I feel like they said something that implied that they remembered that she was like their professor and she didn't.
I mean,
I'd have to go-
is this going back to our like theory we had last
Yes.
podcast that she gave herself self-induced amnesia?
Or whether she induced it or somebody
Yeah.
induced it. So I would suggest going back and checking that part again.
yeah. I mean, I do remember that conversation now that you bring it up.
There was like a little bit of like the kid was almost like surprised that she didn't remember you told us to eat. So I feel like, and I might have just been reading too far into that, but I would say go back and check
feel like
that
it
out.
also
I'm
implied
on
that-
board
on that
with
one.
your grander theory.
I think it also implied that they don't have to eat.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
Like
Yeah,
some
that
sort
they
of
ate-
genetic
they ate because
Something.
they might want to, not because they had to.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Given that they don't really understand what taste buds are, I guess.
So yeah, I don't know if they're robots or magic.
I assume they're
something
like
genetically
vat-grown,
engineered, yeah.
like
Magic
vat-grown
robots.
children or something. But yeah, like I think and of course we can't forget that like the boy at least possessed the ability to
Make a robot
form
cat.
some sort of like nano machine cat, like so
Right,
like
and
Yeah,
the
and then the
girl
girl can play a magical recorder,
yes.
Make barriers and shit.
which
So-
sounds exactly like elementary school kids in Japan to me, for sure.
Sure, I totally believe it. But yeah, and then I think they also like, despite being a breather episode, they also do a great job of like doing the natural escalation of this kind of show, right? Of like,
all
you
units.
thought 2 executioners was bad. Well, now we're throwing the whole book at you. So
Right.
Yeah. And then with the continuing bromance of Brawler and
hoodlum.
the freaking 2-bit hoodlum is just
Yeah,
always
yeah.
is chef's kiss, just always.
Yeah.
always a
I
good
do
watch.
wonder now, like, you think Hoodlum is the third executioner in the OP in disguise or something? Like,
That would be really. I was just thinking that.
Oh yeah, because we haven't uncovered the mole, right?
right? There's a
Right.
mole, and
Supposed
also like
mole, yeah.
the OP shows 4 executioners, and like
Right, we're one
I don't know,
short.
like Hoodlum might just be like wearing a very elaborate, he might just be wearing a very elaborate disguise or something, right?
I wouldn't. I
Part of
wouldn't
me-
put anything off the table with the show.
Yeah, I feel like that might be more likely, but part of me does want Hoodlum to just be.
I mean,
a
I would love
useless
for Hoodlum
guy for the whole show.
right? Like nothing would make me happier than the twist is actually no, Hoodlum really is just a 2-bit like fucking loser criminal.
Right.
That
Because
just
I think we're guaranteed that there's going to be something up with Swindler or whatever it is. But I would love it if the Hoodlum literally was just a Hoodlum.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we're even having these theories about characters that are like this, like surface level dumb, I think really speaks to like how good of a job they've done at making us care about these dirtbags. Like,
Well, we said it. Let's say it again. It's a dumb show written by smart people. Apparently.
yeah,
a
it's
smartly written dumb show.
exactly.
So. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Again, I have nothing bad to say.
Definitely
about
show of
this
the season, like by far and away for me.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. I'm kind of dreading getting into this next show at this point.
I
but
mean,
it
I
must be
hate that we
done.
have to dread
I
this
mean-
because
It must be done. Let's talk about Magatsu
German.
Wahrheit.
So should I be glad I'm
Whatever.
not watching this anymore, or
no. I mean,
Well, here's the thing. I think we should talk about the anime first.
let's
but
talk
the
about
game,
the anime.
The game came out last week.
And spoiled us
I
on the anime.
I played through all the available story chapters,
Damn, okay.
and that has definitely affected my view of the anime.
Right.
But looking at the anime in a bubble, even taking the game context out, I still did not like the direction they were going in episode 4. But I still want to see what happens.
I
Let's put
agree,
it that
but I
way.
do think that again, in a vacuum, I think the story in the Magatsu anime is still quite solid. I think it is legitimately pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The world building is fascinating, and I think that they are in fact doing a pretty good job of setting up the main players, their motivations, and the circumstances that lead them to the actions they take. I actually like even episode 4. I'm like I don't love it because look like fuck the police, but
Yep.
like I think there is something to be done with like the idea of like a member of the like elite jackboot super cops beginning to wonder what the fuck is going on here, and like the reveal that like their like sergeant really is just a fucking authoritarian psychopath. Like
Right. I will say.
I think
Which I feel like they spent way too
Yes,
much
I
time
was
they
on.
gonna
spent
say,
way too much
like,
time on that. Like
that
way too
entire
much.
flashback was basically pointless because it has no
We
bearing on
don't need
anything
to
else.
know why
Well,
this
the thing
guy.
is that it doesn't matter. We already hate the guy, and the thing is that we already know he's a psychopath. He enjoys torturing people. Like
Right. Nothing
all
is gained.
the flashback did was like explain like, oh, it's because he had a hard childhood. That's why he's crazy now. Like,
right, and it, like, I mean, it's not really going to make us more sympathetic.
no,
so
fuck
why are
no.
we even
He's still
like...
he's still a shitheel. Like,
Right.
that doesn't change. Like, that's time that could have been used. Like, if anything, that is time that could have been used to better flesh out Leo. Because, like,
Right.
if you're going to convince us that Leo Cadio is our, like, dueling protagonist, you're not doing a great job of convincing me, because the only thing he has going for him right now is that, like, I might be a jackbooted thug, but I'm a jackbooted thug who's questioning my, like,
Right.
my orders.
But he hasn't actually done
Questioning my
anything other than
orders
look
and then
uncomfortable.
following my order.
Right, but that's the thing, right? It's, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into this, but this is like when, like, members of the police agree that, yeah, there are problems with police corruption and violence, but all you do is act uncomfortable. You don't actually do anything about it. Like, and
Right.
although all that time spent on the sergeant could have been used to better, like, flesh him out. Like, even if it was just something as simple as, like, I don't think we should take this girl in. Like, this doesn't seem right. Like, let's go back and, like, discuss this with our superiors. Instead, he still takes the girl. Like, you know?
Right. The only thing he says is, like, don't hurt her or something.
Like,
and
oh,
that's-
yeah, great. I'm sure that'll work. Yeah, because famously,
that'll stop.
famously,
Yeah.
when the police say, don't hurt this inmate or suspect, the police are famous for not doing that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's... And so, like...
Yeah, he doesn't question why or what they're doing or what the plan
Right, like, he
is or
still
anything. It's just
intrinsically
like-
believes in the righteousness of the state so far. And
Right.
the problem... And despite all that, though, I do think that, like... I do like the overall storytelling of this show, though.
Yes.
Like, in a vacuum, if I didn't know anything about the game, if I didn't even look at that goddamn poster for the anime,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I would still be very interested in this show. I would be pretty invested, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do think that, like, the members of Headhunter are beginning to become a compelling crew. I think that Inumale is a compelling, like, coward protagonist, like, slowly coming into his own. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really interesting things here. The problem is, then we all looked up this week what the video game is about.
Yeah, so but one more thing on episode 4. Were they implying that the Headhunter is stealing weapons to fight dinosaurs and not overthrow the Empire?
Yes,
Yeah.
so they said they
They were-
literally
they were-
said that in episode 1, that, like, the whole reason Headhunter as an organization exists is because the, like, evil magical parliament passed, like, gun control laws in the kingdom, and there are, like, evil dinosaurs with, like,
Right.
disturbingly human teeth hanging out in the countryside that need to be dealt with.
And I mean, even in episode 4, when the Diet member shows up and she's like, now I see the need for our citizens to protect themselves from the mutant dinosaurs running around killing people, but, you know, is it really worth it if then the anti-imperial elements can get a hold of weapons and try to stage a revolution? That would
Right.
just be too dangerous.
People just need to be able to, you know, kill the feral hogs rushing their children, but yeah.
Okay, but if
mean,
there
what-
actually were feral
Right.
Right, I mean, that's
Yeah,
the thing, right? Like, as much as we joke about this being, like, a gun control parable, that's only because we're Americans, where we know that that's absurd. But if you live in a universe where there are...
Yeah.
There are
you might want to think
literally
about it harder.
30 to 50 feral hogs, and they're not just hogs, but they are, like, 8-foot-tall dinosaur men. Like,
That's a little bit different.
maybe you do need a machine gun and a grenade launcher. Like,
Right.
Yeah, right.
So, are you
yeah.
guys? Do you guys assume that it will go downhill then, based on what you know of the game?
right,
Because
yeah.
I don't like.
Yeah, so
Get into that now, yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, I played the game through the story, and before getting into details, probably the biggest problem I have, which I think is also going to run in the anime, is this story talks a big game, but they don't actually end up saying anything. They bring up things like we were just saying. You could possibly use some of the wording in there as a allegory for gun control, but it's not really. Like, they're not really doing it. They're just kind of co-opting those phrases that we've heard and sticking them in the anime. I think there's also a lot of like a class warfare thing going on, right? With the rich and the poor, and
Right.
they harp on that pretty hard in the game, probably harder than the anime. But they don't actually do anything with it. So the game itself, first of all,
Yeah.
we were very wrong.
Right,
the anime and the game are very much
we
connected.
thought it was the original story, but turns out the anime is a prequel.
Yeah, the anime is a prequel to the game, and actually Leocadio is one of the main characters in the game, which we will find out 30 seconds into the game. So, but he's much older. He's like, I think this is supposed to be like 20 or 30 years
He's
later
anime
or something.
old, which means he's
he's
40.
like cool. He's like cool old guy in the anime in the game. So,
Right, and then I've seen art of Inumile as the shady assassin type. I'm wearing fur lining and belts.
So G mentioned so even before we get to the game, the anime the poster for the anime actually has half the.
I actually hadn't seen that when we started watching it.
Yeah, but I mean that's out there, right?
Yeah.
Like anybody can see.
Right,
that
we
as promo.
looked it up
if I had
in retrospect.
Cared to look up anything about this show, I would have seen it.
Right. So I mean that's not really a spoiler if it's the anime promo art, but half the poster is like the characters in the present day, and like half the poster is them in the future. And you see kind of older Leocadio as the grizzled little man guy, and Inumile as the shady assassin guy on the other half of the poster.
Like they're already beginning to like make it very clear who is meant to be signified as the hero and who is meant to be signified as the villain, which I think is my problem here.
Right, and I think they're going for the heroes on the bad guy side and the bad guys on the good guy side, and that's supposed to be interesting or something.
Right, and like what happens in their like lives that like force them into the circumstances they end up in by the time of the actual game.
Right.
Yeah.
So I will point out Inumile has not shown up in the game yet,
Yeah.
but I think he's coming soon. There's only 4 chapters in the initial release, so
4 very poorly translated chapters.
To their credit, they patched a lot of
they? Okay.
a lot of the really bad stuff.
He has a great temperature. Right.
Yeah. So the translation is better. I would not call it great, but you can at least understand what people are saying now. Whereas before, it looked like they literally just popped it in Google Translate on some of the pages.
A winning formula.
Yeah, they did patch some of that in, but so the game is set like far in the future, and they've kind of set up this thing of like there's the old empire, which is clearly bad, but the new empire is pretty good, and you're part of like this like independent PMC. It's kind of like Nerve, where the government hates you, but they put up with you because you're the only ones that can fight the monsters.
I mean, this is a classic premise in a lot of gacha games where you're an independent paramilitary organization.
Right.
You have your own facilities and your own employees.
And so whatever like world-ending event has already happened, and you're kind of like investigating the proper noun, capital letters, the light, to try to figure out what's going to happen and is it going to happen again, or what happened and is it going to happen again. I will say, having played the game, a lot of the stuff that the spy lady's investigating in episode 4, I already kind of know what's going on with all that, and I'll just leave that part out because we all want to watch the anime, but it doesn't necessarily make me more excited for what's
right, because
coming up.
For me personally, what was really like getting me concerned about the anime gel is when you started talking about like in the game, Headkeeper, this like populist organization in the anime, has now become this like extremist terrorist group, right?
Okay, so I would point out the Headkeeper has not shown up in the game that's available, at least internationally.
Okay.
Right now. So I don't know.
I did find that description describing the new chapter of Magatsu Wahrheit, the game coming out in Japan, tie-in with the anime, etc.
I haven't seen any of that. That might just be they may be doing that as like that's the official like Empire press release take on Headhunter, but when you actually play the game, it's different.
Maybe.
More
I mean, like it would not be.
But I will say, because I mentioned the factions are kind of like the old Empire and the new Empire. The new Empire is definitely being painted as like good guys. So like there's like this. I guess the best way to put this young senator guy and the actual emperor himself are both like these like nice, just people, But it's the old people from the old empire that are still like part of the Senate and everything that are like the bad guys. So, the system isn't broken. There's just a few bad apples, that kind of thing.
And I think so. That is actually what gets into like the core of my concerns about the anime. Is actually maybe extends into the core of like my issue with like Japanese media and its like critique of systems. Is that Japanese media is very rarely revolutionary in tone. It's almost entirely reformatory, right? Like
We're gonna fix it from the inside.
Right, like Japanese media to the dot is almost always about how it's not the systems that are broken, but the people who exploit them. In fact, often Japanese media is very defensive of the status quo and the systems as like these intrinsically immutable good things in the universe, and that it is the responsibility of good people to uphold those systems and not to exploit those systems. And they never question what allowed these systems to become so exploitable in the first place, merely that we just have to ensure that the moral character of those who hold all this power are good.
Yeah, and I would go even a step further, where I feel like in the game, again, they're not actually trying to say anything at all. They're just echoing those words to sound deep.
Great.
Because I don't feel like thematically what they're doing makes sense as a parallel to real things too much. But I mean, the language is there,
man.
But I think it's just that they're just throwing it out there to sound cool and relevant.
When fucking Arknights has a more nuanced take on its multifaceted conflict, you're in trouble.
I'll also just throw in, there's also been like ghosts and dragons and nonsense showing up in the game too. So I mean, you already have the dinosaurs, right? So sure, why not? So yeah, and also the game is very boring. It's extremely boring. I'm probably not going to keep playing
I know.
it.
I hate that we keep forcing you to play it, Shell, out of our sick curiosity.
I did it for the sake of journalism, really. But it was a grind. I probably could have knocked the whole thing out in like 2 days, but it took me like 2 weeks because like, all right, let me just do like a mission or two today.
Yeah.
I'll move on. But I did get through all the main story bits, and yeah, I don't feel like it helped my opinion of where the anime is going.
Again, I hope we're proven wrong, right? I hope that the anime itself still manages to be good in spite of like the information we now have of like what happens in the future. But I think it is unfortunate because I think a lot of us were really like, maybe not to the same level of quality, but I think we were all really kind of hoping that this show would have some of that Rage of Bahamut anime energy of like just totally original take on an established universe that's like not afraid to do its own thing. So us, in hindsight, finding out that actually no, the anime is actually far more shackled to the game's story than we had initially assumed is... I mean, it's disappointing.
Yeah.
I will point out the other character that I've noticed is the little girl with the purple hair in episode 3. Right. She is also one of the captains in the game that shows up as an adult.
Sure.
And one of the chapters she finds her grandfather's old rifle from episode 3, so there have been a couple of other little callbacks here and there.
Okay.
But I think there is still room for the anime to do its own thing in the bubble, in kind of the bubble that it lives in, because it is what happens prior to the game doesn't really matter so long as it ends at the same world-ending event.
Unless, of course, next episode it's a 20-year time skip and...
Yep. Yes.
I think, Artemis, you joke, but I think we will get that, like, eventually. Like,
I mean, it's on the poster, right?
Right. Like,
so, I mean, you could look at that as either the poster is foreshadowing what's going to happen in the anime, or because the game has been out for a while in Japan, right? So from the Japanese perspective, there's people that would have already played the game that might have been just a shout out to them, but I don't know. Yeah, that very well could happen. They could just time skip it, and yeah, I don't know.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's it for the anime talk. I intentionally put this at the end.
We don't have to do this. I mean,
I just wanted to... G and I have been dancing around the Genshin Impact takes, but if you're here for anime talk, this is still an anime game, and we do talk about anime games. But I wanted to talk about maybe not so much the mechanical bits of it, because I feel like that's been done to death.
Yeah,
The game's been out for
we're a month
and half
late
or
to the
whatever.
discourse about Genshin Impact, the video game.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a case for it, and we've kind of like talked a little bit about it on past episodes, very little bit, but I find it very interesting. It is an anime game, but it is not. It's a Chinese developer, right? And I've been finding it to be a very interesting experience because it feels like it comes from a different cultural perspective than what we would normally get.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. Like, if we want to get into like the narrative, like thematic aspects of Genshin Impact, like, you know, yeah, I do think that. I do think it is interesting to kind of see like these very familiar anime tropes, right? You know, the spunky chef girl, the cool guy with the eye patch, you know, the One-sama librarian, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, yes, like these are all very familiar tropes in anime, but it is kind of interesting to see them. I wouldn't say like dramatically different, but like,
Well, it's like, so for a little bit of context, the game in what's currently available, the game has a bunch of different countries that are modeled off of real countries. And right now there's only two. There's one that's like fake anime Europe, like medieval Europe. It could be Germany or France or some mainland European country, whatever. And then you have fake anime China, right?
yeah.
And they do a very good job of making them feel like different countries inside the game.
Yeah,
like
I would agree with that.
like each one, like the people, like aside from even just like the way people dress and the architecture and all that, like they establish like different cultural values and things like that, and it feels like. Well, it feels like it's coming from a uniquely Chinese perspective, and if it wasn't, some of the things might be a little problematic. That
No, I do agree. Like, I think, like, I actually talked about this, like, you know, in our Discord a little while back, that one of the really interesting things about, like, the not China, like, fantasy country in Genshin Impact is that it is actually not a particularly idealized take on China. Like,
Right.
the majority of the country is in ruins, like, you know, it is constantly beset by monsters. Like, the system that is being upheld is like getting bloated and like starting to like fall apart at the seams. Like, their god is dead, and the people themselves, right? Like, they are like overly bureaucratic and like litigious. Like, you know,
Right.
there are a lot of like very classic tropes about Chinese culture at play here of like, they're greedy and materialistic, and
Right.
you know, it is interesting, like, and this is not to say that, you know, it is a very critical take either, though. Like, it is still very idealized in the sense of like, what a beautiful nation, and like, you know, what beautiful aesthetics and blah blah.
They did
blah.
make anime China way prettier,
Right.
than
But
anime
like, it is
Europe.
interesting
Yeah.
that it is like surprisingly self-critical, like especially for like a game made in mainland China by mainland Chinese developers. Like, I am surprised that they do not have PRC goons knocking on their door about some of the stuff that is like being couched in this like subtext.
Aha, but this
I
is
think they made it-
medieval China, don't you know? It's fine.
I'm sorry, Artemis, I couldn't hear you there.
I said, like, maybe it's okay because, this is medieval China. It's not, you know, like today's China, you know.
Well,
And it's, you know, it's not really China, even though it looks exactly like medieval China,
right.
and everyone has Chinese names, and yeah.
but I think the reason it kind of works, though, is that I think that a Western take on like a criticism of China would, like, for better or worse, be couched in a lot of racism and like xenophobia, whereas like this criticism,
Or maybe even just not taken seriously.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
whereas like I feel like a lot of like the like morally gray subtext of Genshin Impact's portrayal of like fantasy China, like, it feels like when, you know, for example, we Americans talk about America, right? Like, it feels like a country. It feels like countrymen talking about their country. Like, people who
Right.
have lived there their whole lives are aware of the problems. Like, and in a ways, it actually does a really good job of like sort of humanizing. Like, I mean, hopefully you already humanize people from other countries anyway, but if you
Right.
didn't, I think Genshin Impact is a surprisingly good argument that, like, no, the Chinese people are not just, like, mindless drones following orders. Like, they are aware of the problems of their country and, like, their culture, and it doesn't imply that it has solutions, but it at least, like, proves that they are not ignorant about...
Right. And that's not a cultural perspective we get ever.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's, unless you're really looking for it, we obviously get American perspective, and because we're nerds, we get some Japanese perspective from the media we consume, but yeah, I mean, this is, I think, hands down the biggest profile, internationally speaking, biggest profile game developed by a Chinese developer, right? Like,
Definitely one of the ones that has made the most money, that's for sure.
Well, yes, definitely the most money, but as far as even just like
International
international
yeah.
impact in the main and recognition in the mainstream and everything, it's been a huge phenomena, really.
Yeah.
And I was surprised they went there, because the prologue of the game, they start you off in very like standard
high fantasy JRPG.
It feels like I described it as feeling like a Tales game, right?
Yeah.
But after maybe a couple hours, when they put you into fake China, you start to say, oh, this is actually a little bit different, and that surprised me a lot. So I just wanted to talk about that because I found that very fascinating. And I feel like with this game, a lot of people hear the descriptions of like the monetization and the free-to-play thing, and the fact that it's a quote-unquote live service game that's going to be depending on constant updates and things like that, and that those are just like instant, nope, I'm not touching it. And a lot of that criticism is fair.
I think that's a totally fair take, to be honest. Like, the monetization of that game is kind of fucking
the gacha
rough.
system is pretty bad. I will say that there are ways to mitigate this.
There always are, Jell. You play a
are
lot
different,
of these games, all right. Of course, you would say there are a lot of ways to mitigate the
that are
monetization.
different because it's an action game, and you don't need all the meta characters. Then it's a little bit different.
Fair.
But no, it's totally fair. As those are all valid criticisms. I just wanted to point out that this is not like. I think a lot of times when people hear the mobile game structure and everything, they think it's JPEGs with numbers on them, which 90%
Which
of
it
the time
usually
normally
is. Let's be.
And that is not the case with this game. It is actually a legitimate game.
Yeah, I mean, I think
with
that's
questionable, perhaps monetization, but the actual game itself is a real game.
Yeah,
that
I think
is,
that's,
I think worth checking out. I mean, it's free.
I would agree with that take, and yeah, just to I think again to tie this all back to like this podcast, which is about anime. I think it's interesting.
It's clearly aimed at the anime crowd,
right? Or
it's an anime game,
right? Or
we talked about the
where I
Chinese
was going with this is like I think it's
yeah.
interesting, and I think I would like to see this more in the future of like the aesthetics of anime, but like portrayed through different cultural lenses. Like I don't agree with this take, but like a lot of people like to argue the original Avatar: The Last Airbender is like that's anime aesthetics interpreted through an American cultural lens, but like I think it is. Arrow, I said I didn't agree with the take. I was just saying that is something people have said before. But you know what I mean, right? Of like, I think it's going to be interesting because I think so much of anime is termed in Japanese culture, right? Like,
right.
Again, I'm being very reductive here, but like even stuff like Hot Blood and Bushido and Willpower and all that stuff, right? Is like that's. Or even what we were saying before about Magatsu and like our worries about like how much is its criticisms going to mean anything. A lot of that is couched in Japanese culture, and as anime aesthetics get more popular internationally, right? Like not just in China, not just in America, but other countries too, right? Like anime's big in France. There's a burgeoning anime scene in like the Middle East. Like,
yep.
I'm kind of curious, like as this kind of continues to happen, like. Yeah, are we going to get shows that look like what we've always known to be anime, but, are just going to be espousing things that, like, different things because of the cultures of the people who made them, and, like,
it's not going to be set in a Japanese high school, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
or structured like a Japanese high school,
Right, or or maybe there won't be like a ranking system,
Right. Yep.
But
Yeah, so I think that aspect of it, out of everything, has been the most interesting to me, and it is an anime like they've done this with other games too, but like they hire Japanese voice actors because they're going for the anime, crowd with it. So it's in that realm, but it is very interesting to see it come from a different perspective. So. All right.
finally got that out of our systems.
We got it out of our system. I apologize.
Yeah,
Arrow, you're so exasperated.
You're still gonna say you got out of your systems next week, like next time. I mean,
Jill and I are still going to talk about it. Like the November 11th patch is coming out.
off.
Yeah, when this podcast goes out, I think is going to be their first major update.
Yeah. I'm going to have to roll for Zhongli and Child or
Right,
whatever
sure,
that dude's
dude.
name is.
Yeah. So it may pop up again, but I don't think we need to do a whole segment on it.
Arrow,
again,
if this really bothers you, you just think of this segment as our impromptu, annual gotcha podcast that we just shoot
this is how G and I feel when you guys talk about Kamen Rider.
Jesus. At least
If only I had an equivalent.
At least
I'll
Kamen Rider's
think of
Yeah.
something.
airing Japanese.
Yeah,
show.
Artemis, you let us know what topic you want to cover.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
And we'll devote
on a
another
tangent
20
there.
minutes to
Artemis's
that.
Japanese
Yeah.
vending machine reviews. Actually, that'd be great.
All right.
Well, I think with that,
With that, yes, we can wrap up. Let's do our housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. Iroh's actually writing about Magatsu Wahrheit.
Yeah,
right?
definitely check
I will
those out.
get episode 4 post out before episode 5 airs.
Yeah, so you can get some more specific analysis on each episode for that. Is Zig still doing Kamen Rider, or have you guys given up on that?
I mean, Kamen Rider was on break this week for the
Yeah, I know it was on break
relay
this week,
race,
but I guess
but look,
the run with the wind
yeah,
race.
yeah, that one. Saber, Kamen Rider Saber has not been looking great.
No improvements.
Nope.
Since last time. So, but yeah, check those out. For you can follow us on Twitter at the GLORIO blog. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, and you can like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and that's gonna do it. We'll see everybody next time.
「またない彼氏ってられない」「街に繰り出すよって